So many of you may be familiar with the Knowledge Management Center, where you can get answers to a lot of your questions without having to contact a human directly. Doesn't mean you don't have access to the human, it just means that you can find some information on your own. What I'm sharing right now is our article that you may be familiar with, and that's the framework, the 6 elements that make a successful mentorship program. I like to reference this, one, to let people who may not be aware of it know about it, but to also highlight which element of success we're focusing on in our topic of the day. And today we're talking about being data driven, because the data we're talking about is flag data. These data are coming from peers. These data are coming from students themselves. And I know, I spent over 10 years working on campus, both as a faculty member and in institutional research. And most of the data that we used when we talked about student success came from faculty, came from application forms, came from sources that weren't the students themselves or weren't the peers of the students. This is a really the mentorship program is a unique way to get that peer data specifically into your system or into your student success network. Let's talk for a second, though, about what we mean by a student success network or a student success strategy in general. If you think about how a student can either not persist or not make it to completion, there's usually something specific or a broad category that gets in the way. It could be academics, meaning in which case your campus probably has tutoring as part of the strategy or available to students. Another reason students may struggle a little bit or not be able to persist or succeed to completion could be a developmental or like a personal development or social kind of aspect, right? I don't have friends, I don't feel connected, I don't feel like I belong on campus. That's a different intervention, and there are lots of other, there are things like clubs and organizations and ways of supporting students who need that type of student support. Could be a financial issue. We all have financial aid offices and various resources in that area. Or it could be a health concern, whether it's mental health or physical health. There are also activities and parts of the support system on your campus that can help students who need support in those areas. Whoops. That's what happens when you click the wrong tab. The good thing is that mentorship covers all of those different categories, right? When students are talking to peers and peers have the ability to raise flags, it can either direct students to those targeted support services or provide resources that allow them to take the most advantage of those. So mentorship is really an umbrella over your whole student success strategy. And it's great to be able to look at it that way and to know the power of it. So Catherine did an excellent job of showing you how flags get into your dashboard and how you can access them and what you can do with them. I just want to quickly go over how you can customize or you can configure the flags to map the goals of your program. At the top of the screen, you're looking at the 3 ways we define programs or the general goals. It can be a student success program, but there's also programs that might be focused on career readiness, or they might be online focused programs where the flags take a little bit of a different terminology because it's an online program and doesn't involve physical on-campus types of experiences. Regardless, there are standard flag categories that fall or that are part of the standard program. I've listed them here, and you'll notice that they are aligned with those different areas of student success strategy, right? If a student is struggling academically, they might need tutoring. If they're thinking of transferring or dropping out or considering switching majors, that's an advising kind of thing. I would call those academically aligned flags. On the other side, the student development, the financial need, the health and wellness area, there are different flags as well, or that fall into those type of categories. And again, as Catherine said, you can have those flags go to the key people on campus who are there to act on that data right away. These can be slightly edited to map the needs of your program or depending on the goals of your program along the way. That's something that you could talk to your Mentor Collective support person about. What we usually get when we have these these webinars is what are other campuses doing? What are my colleagues doing? What are my peers doing, right? It's not just students who like to listen to peers, it's those of us who are working on campus as well. So you may or may not have responded to our recent partner education survey. If you did, thank you very much. We use this information and we share this information. If you haven't, that's okay. I'm going to share some of the results with you right now. So what either you and or your peers in higher education told us is that there are some pretty typical actions that are taken when flags come in. Catherine showed you how to be able to get that information, but what most of the campuses are doing are by far reaching out to the mentees directly. And that's so good to see because that's what they're there to do, right? Flags are individually actionable. They mean that a student needs help in some area, either critically or fairly immediately. And that's what most of the campuses who are using flags are doing. It's also common to see other campuses sharing with other offices. Catherine gave some examples. I'm going to give some more examples, but there are tons of offices as part of that student success network on your campus that could benefit or be more effective if they have this peer-driven information. They also might Campuses also are personally reaching out to the mentors, supporting the mentors and how they can support the mentees. We all know students are going to listen to peers before anyone else. And if we can use them as a conduit to get them the resources, get them the help they need, or get them the little nudge to use those offices, that can be really effective. Also, not less than half of the respondents to this survey, but still quite a few, these are the top 5, are entering flags into another system. You can see I've named some of the systems there. In student conduct systems, student early or alert systems, or general student success systems, this peer-sourced information might be the only source of information that comes from students and their peers. So some of our campuses are actually taking the flag data and making sure that they end up in those other systems so that it's valuable to the folks who are addressing additional needs for the students. Also, they're exporting flag data for analysis, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a slide ahead. To whom are they sending these flag data, right? if they're not reaching out to the mentee or the mentor directly, who are they sharing these their flag data with, my colleagues? So a lot are going to recruitment, partners, and external relations. So having a mentorship program is great for recruitment. Students want to see that this exists for them, and it's great for getting students to come to campus. But also there are a number of flags that where the information that comes in is part of affecting MELT or affecting the students who actually show up on that first day of school. So think about your recruitment partners if you have some flag data that might be useful for them. The next few bullet points here are all about reporting. So if you are grant funded and you have data to report, if you have a supervisor who likes to know that you're doing your job well, you should use these data. If you have leadership on campus that wants to know how students are being served through a mentorship program, they are also audiences of data that come from flags and conversations. I think the last ones are the more actionable sharing of data. So deans of students, academic advisors, tutoring teams. These are those examples of action that can happen when there's academic or student development areas of support that we can share. There's a few missing though. These are from the campuses, or these are what campuses have actually told us they're doing with flag data. So I'm not making this up. You're not just having to listen to Shannon. This is actually what's happening. I will suggest a few more though, and Catherine already planted the idea of the financial aid office, either having access to the dashboard or getting regular information about financial flags. I would also say that things like roommate conflicts or other personal development or social type of flags would be useful for, in some cases, for resident hall advisors or folks working in the residence halls. Flag data is always important or useful in your student information systems or your CRMs. Health and counseling centers, making sure that they have access to the students who may have health and wellness flags. And then of course, career services as well. That often shows up in the career readiness programs, but we're not talking about goals today, but if students are interested in developing their career readiness, there's goal and flag information that's really useful for your career services offices. The final thing I want to say, because I don't know if you know this or if Jen said this at the beginning, because I wasn't fully paying attention, I don't think, is that we intended to make this webinar as short and sweet as possible so that you can have either your lunch, your pre-lunch, or your post-lunch hour, a little bit of time to yourself. So what I want to share with you is that a lot of folks are using flag data to act on directly from the dashboard, like Catherine is showing. Several are exporting the data, and if you're not familiar, there's an export page on your dashboard, and flag data can manually be exported. It comes out in a CSV file. This is useful for that types of analysis, sharing a list with other offices, just looking at the information so you can act on it as a group instead of individually one at a time. But but flag data can also be automated. If you like the more technical terms, let me just tell you that using an SFTP export, you can on a regular basis export flag data into a shared server or shared common space, and then have it imported into whatever system you might want to, whether that be Maxient, Navigate, SIS, some other system, but that can be automated and doesn't have to always be manual. What I'm showing here is just a screenshot from our Knowledge Management Center. Again, those answers are there, but if you want to talk to your Mental Collective support person, they'd be happy to help you with that as well.